when I was 13 and 16, I was sexually assaulted by a family member, no less. So that introduced a different aspect to me in terms of how I trust people and how I engage in not just relationships, but boundaries.
Welcome back to the podcast. I started this podcast as a way to help Black men in all aspects of our lives. Studies show on average we lose 2.8 years of our life when we're under heavy stress. And I think we can gain those 2.8 years back if we express ourselves healthily. Stick with me as I interview therapists, doctors, advocates, activists, and friends about how we can be better as Black men and as a Black community. If you're not subscribed to us on YouTube and following us on Instagram and TikTok, you'll definitely want to do that. Without further ado, let's get into the episode. What's up, y'all? We back with another episode of Express Yourself Black Man Podcast. We're here with Anthony. He goes by I Speak 1906 on all social media handles or all social media platforms. He's a very, very influential TikTok content creator, a man of many, many hats. Anthony, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good, man. So I first got onto you when I got onto TikTok, right? I have this bro. I don't know if you know him, Odie. And we were kind of strategizing, talking about content creation and growing on different platforms. He was like, yo, bro, if you're on TikTok, you got to follow Anthony. You got to follow I Speak 1906. So you were one of the first accounts that I followed. I was like, yo, damn, this dude got over 1 million followers on TikTok. Like, this is dope. And I started seeing what you were posting and all that kind of stuff. And I think a lot of times when we see people that are creating on these platforms, we start thinking about like, yo, how did they get to this position? Like, how did they get here, right? So can you tell me a little bit about your story? Because we had the conversation, a precursor to this episode. I feel like you have a really powerful story. So take us through that, bro.
Absolutely. So first and foremost, thank you for allowing me the opportunity to talk to your audience. I oftentimes liken it to, when I was a teacher before I joined the military, and I wouldn't let everyone come and talk to my students, so allowing me to speak to your audience, I'm forever grateful. When I started on TikTok, I actually wasn't creating the content that I create now. My wife put me on and I was like, TikTok, that's that little dancing app for kids. Right. I'm just like, I'm a grown man. Like, I ain't finna, I'm good on that. You know what I'm saying? So she put me on to now my bro, The Conscious Lead. And, he was just posting intellectual content and things of that nature. And I was just like, yo, I could do that. Right. Like, that's me educating, being myself. So initially I started off with what I knew best, my spoken word. So I posted a video talking about the duality between, it was a question that someone had asked me, and I figured it'd be better to respond with a poem if I would rather my 16-year-old daughter being pregnant or my 16-year-old son being gay. And pretty much what I talked about was that, my love for my children is unconditional, and that, if my son was gay, I would treat it just as if he was straight. Right. That video blew up. I gained my first 100,000 supporters, sound like they call people my followers, in my first 2 months of being on the app. I was still trying to figure out how to use the green screen effect with over 1,000 followers. Over 100,000. And I was just like, whoa, what is this? At this point, this is my largest platform. So then, like I said, I came across the Conscious Lead. And then when I started my intellectual content, so to speak, I saw an opportunity to submit myself within both Black TikTok and Black activist TikTok as one of the leading Black male intellectuals. I didn't want to be like that guy because I already feel internally I am that guy. But as it relates to the platform, being able to work alongside the other people, the men, the women, the people in general that are in this space, I feel as though there was an opportunity for me to submit myself in that position. So I started with current events, debunking other people's videos, just giving my opinion on certain things. And I'm so thankful to my community, not just, my community, but my TikTok community that said, hey, we respect this guy's intelligence. And that's always how I've cemented myself on every platform that I'm on. Like comes and goes. They're going to like a video that I post. They're not going to like a video that I post. But I focus more so on people respecting me and respecting my intelligence than worried about whether or not they like me. Because then you start to get into that cycle of posting what I call shock value content because you just want your views to be high and you want more people to support your platform. When the reality is that as long as you're consistent and as long as you're being yourself, the people that want to gravitate towards you, they will.
Man, that's a fact, bro. That's a fact. And I feel like a lot of times as creators, that's something that we struggle with, right? We struggle with the the numbers, right? We're like, oh man, my engagement is down, but you can't really control that. I was just talking to my girl about that today, feeling like there's certain things that I post. I'm like, yo, I feel like this is super powerful, not even just on a shock factor value, but just on an educational value. But just for some reason, it won't do what I feel like it should do on social media platforms. You just got to kind of chalk that up and understand that that's not a reflection of you or, your platform. It's just a reflection of the fact that you're on social media and you don't have control over where these things go and how the algorithm decides to push things.
Well, see, here's the thing. I tell
mhm.
people this too. Content creation in and of itself, 20% science, 80% luck.
Mhm.
Really and truly. And
Mhm.
I've really broken it down. And people say, well, why do you give it, luck so much? Because the reality is that so many factors play into your video doing well. I'll give you an example. I posted a duet. And for those of you that don't know what a duet is, it's pretty much a side-by-side video whereby you can either live react or silently react to someone else's video, right? And all I said in the video was, woo, at the end of the video.
Mm-hmm.
The videos start going crazy on TikTok. It was like 100,000, 200,000, 300,000, jumped all the way up to about, I think like 1.1 million views, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, okay, cool. Mind you, completely forgot about the video, continue creating content.
Mm-hmm.
One random day, I post a video. Typically, I post about 3 to 4 videos in my video cycle throughout the day. This video pops back up and I'm talking about the mentions are going crazy. The comments are going crazy. My homeboy texts me. No, he called me. Hey, bro, you on Snoop Instagram? I said, Snoop? Like Snoop Dogg? Like Snoop Doggy Dogg.
Right.
He was like, yeah. In 30 minutes, that video went from 1 million views to 6 million views.
Dang.
Just like that.
Dang.
And I had completely forgot about the video.
Right.
But somehow it came across his scope. And that's just on one of the lower end of the spectrums of like happened since of, the time period that you posted in, the political or social climate that we're in, how current is the information that you're passing. And then really and truly the substance. Is there substance there? Most oftentimes people go to quote shock value content is because they know for a fact it's going to evoke or invoke. I think invoke is the right word. Invoke a specific reaction from a specific community that's been tried, tested, and is true. 100%.
Absolutely.
Not because they genuinely believe in it, not because it reflects or mirrors who they are, but because they know it's going to get a reaction. Now, here's the downside to that. The upside is the views, of course, right? Here's the downside to that. You inadvertently build a community on false pretenses, and then you try to switch back to who you actually are, and then you're not getting the engagement. And you're wondering why, when really and truly you built a community off of something that's not indicative of who you truly are.
Right. Yeah. And you got to be careful, especially as a creator and anybody that has a platform, of building a community based on things that you aren't in actual support of or that you're not actually passionate about. Like, I'm very careful about the content that I put out because I don't want anybody navigating or coming to or gravitating to the page and assuming that this is the kind of content that they're going to get if it's not something I'm passionate about. So only the videos that I put out, reels, any kind of content, I want to make sure that it's things that I'm always talking about, that I'm always preaching: meditation, mental health, affirmations, relationships, getting into, your physical health bag, all of these different kind of things. I talk about those things in rotation, right? So if anybody, if any post goes viral, whatever the case may be, it's a post that I'm actually interested in or a topic that I'm actually interested in, bro. So yeah, I appreciate you breaking that down for people because a lot of people don't understand it. And I know there's people that listen to the podcast that are probably have their own businesses and they're trying to be creators and figure out that lane. And they, they're being consistent, but they're maybe not seeing the views or the engagement that they want. I always tell people, yo, just keep being consistent, bro.
That's it.
Put out what you can. Don't burn yourself out, right? Like don't make it a 9 to 5. Keep it fun. Be consistent and just do it with integrity. Yeah, do it with integrity. And so we talked about your story in the precursor to this episode, bro. Can you take us through, right? So we talked about TikTok, right? But let's go way before TikTok. You talked about being in the foster care system and how that influenced your development. Like, take us through that period of your life and like what led up to you eventually, hopping on TikTok. Like, go through that stage.
So the first 5 years of my life I spent in foster care. As soon as I was born, my mom gave me up for, whatever reasons. And it really built for me my foundation on networking, on, how to love someone, the coming and going. Some people may very well call it, abandonment issues or whatever the case may be. But it really taught me rather that life is so cyclical that once you start dealing with a situation consistently, there's only a few things that are actually going to stray away from what you're used to, and then they'll come right back, right? Mm-hmm. So as I continue to get older, I recognize that the foundation of everything we do in this life is education. That's it. Regardless of whether you get a degree, whether or not you are teaching yourself, whether or not you have a mentor, everything centers around education. So in that, I said, you know what? If nothing else, if I have control over nothing else, I know I have control over my education. So in that, I just started hitting my books heavy. I skipped the first and the second grade, was an honor student from the time I was damn near born to all the way up to my senior year in high school. And I got 1B. And Ms. Johnson, if I ever see you in real life ever again, we're going to have an immediate misunderstanding. Respectfully, of course. Mm-hmm. In that, that teacher, and that was a lesson in and of itself, right? Because sometimes people don't like to see you doing well. So they'll seek to try to inadvertently humble you, so to speak, when really and truly, it wasn't even necessary. So you're grading me harsher because of a track record that I've built up off of nothing more than my sheer hard work and dedication. Right. So through those trials and tribulations I dealt with when I was 13 and 16, I was sexually assaulted by a family member, no less. So that introduced a different aspect to me in terms of how I trust people and how I engage in not just relationships, but boundaries, setting down certain boundaries. And then the responses that I would get when telling people and or being open about that, it'd be like, oh, well, you didn't like it? Or dang, why would you snitch? And it's just like, really? Yeah, that's what you have to say. Like, seriously, not, oh, did you go to therapy? Not, oh, how did that impact you sexually? How did that impact you socially? How did that impact you emotionally? How did that impact you physically and or spiritually? They don't ask those questions. So in that, I learned that healing and our happiness is our responsibility. Mm-hmm. Now, when someone comes into your life, it's to add on to that. But the whole process of healing in and of itself and being happy, see me, I don't chase happiness. I go after joy because joy is everlasting. Happiness, it comes and goes. Joy is everlasting. So I can feel comfortable enough in myself to take myself out to eat, to take myself to a movie, to go get my feet done. You know what I'm saying? Shout out to guys to get their feet done. You know what I'm saying?
Sir, yes, sir. My girl was just talking about doing that tomorrow.
Hey, go get them feet done. I'm telling you, it's a wonderful thing. But, those moments that, you work through and then you don't realize, my grandmother always taught me this thing that if you want to know what you haven't recovered from, have children. Right. And I see so much of my anger and so much of my frustration as a child, even just in my daughter, my oldest. So as I continue to progress, I went to college and I end up dealing with my next situation that kind of shaped how I deal with relationships. And that was domestic violence. Oftentimes people don't think that men can be victims of domestic violence. I was both physically and verbally abused. And, most oftentimes people look at your stature, at this point now I'm 6 foot 250. She was all of, I think like 5'3", 5'4", something like that, maybe 100 pounds soaking wet. But none of that matters when it comes to that dynamic. So in that, again, when you start telling your truth and when you start, telling your story, it's just like, really? You got abused. Like, you got abused. It's like, yes. Why is that so hard to conceptualize? So in that, when you're having those, what I call restorative conversations, it's more so, can you ask and want to hear from a place of understanding, or you only asking and probing essentially to criticize and to make fun, Right. Therapy genuinely changed my life. I graduated college, went on to become a teacher. I taught 6th and 7th grade English. And then I joined the military. And, I've been rocking in the military for a little close to 8 years. However, I've been on TikTok for 2 years. So right before I hopped on the platform, I was real heavy on Facebook, real heavy on Instagram. And my YouTube was okay, but not nearly doing the numbers that it's doing now.
Right.
And in that, I saw an opportunity not just to get on a social media platform, but to have a worldwide impact. The thing that I love most about TikTok leading up to was not only the nature of the platform, but the reach of the platform. When I have individuals from South Africa, I have a moderator on my live streams that literally lives in Australia. The fact that we can have that reach and be able to touch people from around the world in such a positive and intellectual and impactful way. Oh my goodness. It's almost like you take those experiences that you had over the course of your life, right? Starting a family, moving to a different place. I live in Hawaii now. I was in Virginia. So that was a culture shock in and of itself. And that's when I blew up, on social media. And then all of my other platforms, of course, the numbers started going up on those as well. So in that, I realized that we take those experiences, and then when we share them, we inadvertently give other people the encouragement and the empowerment to share their stories as well. And I saw an opportunity to do that. And I just wanted to serve as just another beacon of light for individuals. And oftentimes it's for those that may not want to speak or those that can't speak up for themselves.
Man, that's a fact. And you know what I call that on the platform? I call it leading with vulnerability. And what that essentially is exactly what you just said. It's talking about your story, being vulnerable first, you leading with your vulnerability. And what that normally does is exactly what you said, is it opens up other people to be vulnerable as well, because they understand like, yo, Anthony went through it. I could talk about it, right? Because I have men that DM me all the time, bro. You won't believe. Or you probably will believe, right? Like I have men that DM me all the time about sexual assault or even domestic violence, right? And they're like, yo, bro, are you going to have somebody that comes on the platform and talks about sexual assault? Or are you going to have somebody that talks about domestic violence? So this episode to me is very, very important, not only because of the platform that you have, but because you're open to talking about these things. And so I wanted to expand on it a little bit more. You talked about it being a family member. Can you take us through how that happened? Because I feel like a lot of people, when they think about sexual assault in families, they always think about it from the perspective of, you know what I'm saying? Like they think it doesn't happen with us. You know what I'm saying? Like they think it doesn't happen in the
Right.
Right. So can you tell us like how that went down in your family?
So I was raised by a lot of different family members. And in that it ended up being the daughter of an aunt of mine, essentially my cousin. And it kind of started with just inadvertent touching. And it'd be like, yo, what is you doing? You know what I'm saying? Like, oh, you family, like chill. You know what I'm saying? To the point thereafter, it started to become more manipulative. Oh, if you don't do this, I'm going to say this happened, or, if you don't do this, that, that's going to happen. And you start to feel, especially as a younger child, and you have an older relative that's putting that pressure on you, you start to feel like, I don't want to get in trouble, or, at the time I was, really full of anger. A lot of my youthful anger, I call it, that I had from, not having my parents around, bouncing from home to home, feeling like, I almost liken it to the scene in The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air when Will Smith said to Uncle Phil, why they don't want me, man? That's how I lived the majority of my life, until I realized that it's not about those that are not in your life. It's about those that had the courage to stick around in your life and be there for you. So in that, I did ended up going to go tell my aunt, as well as, another family member. And I was told I was a liar, that it never happened. And it was a lot to stomach, because to go through that and to feel in that moment that the person that you wanted to be there for you, to support you, to have your back, is telling you that you're a liar and that what you're saying didn't happen. Wow. It's almost like taking a gut punch from Kimbo Slice. You know what I'm saying? Like that thing hurt, And in that, when I was younger, it was definitely a lot more aggressive in terms of, her desire to be penetrated, her desire to, touch me or whatever. And then when I got older, similar scenario, but it's more so like I got cornered, and I didn't want to put my hands on her, but I also wanted to restrain her in a way to be like, yo, I'm older now. You ain't finna do this to me again.
Right.
But sexual assault is sexual assault, period.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? You touching all on me, you try to, hey, nah, absolutely not.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and you have people that will seek to try to put you into like this box of, well, what did you do? Or, you know, what led up to that? Or how was this environment created? Sometimes you don't have control over that. Sometimes you literally get cornered. And in that, your fight or flight response takes over. So as I got older, persevering through that, I recognized that this wasn't my fault. And for a long period of time, I blamed myself. I'm just like, well, you know, if I would have just ate my broccoli, you know, maybe she wouldn't have been able to use that against me, you know, as a child. Like, oh, I'm going to tell you didn't eat your broccoli, or, you know, I'm going to tell you broke this, or, and it's just like, what? Like
that's not even,
you know, like the really, really small things that, you know, and they'll try to manipulate you and say, well, I'm going to say you did this, or I'm going to say you did that. And, you know, many times I tell, you know, especially parents, when I say, you know, which one's your favorite child? Oh, I don't have a favorite child. I love all of my children equally.
Damn
no, you
lie.
don't.
That's a damn
no, you
lie.
don't.
That's a damn lie.
No, you don't. We all have a favorite. Now, you don't want to treat all of them differently, but there's definitely one that you favor over the others. You know what I'm saying? And oftentimes I think that parents take that negatively and say that, oh, you mistreat the other ones. No, but tried and true. You got a favorite. You definitely got a favorite. So in that, when you know that that child is always believed, you know, always gets, you know, the praises and whatever the case may be, and you may not get the same because of something that you might have done, or in the sense of, you know, maybe you was bad in school, or maybe you was bad out in the neighborhood, and it's just like, you always causing trouble. Why should I believe you? Blah, blah, blah. And it's just like, because this ain't just something that you just pull up out the sky.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? This ain't something that just came out of, you know, out of nowhere. Right. And I had to recognize when I got older and actually started going to therapy when I joined the military, that number one, it wasn't my fault. And then number two, my healing is my responsibility. So going through certain aspects of that dynamic, I'm still working through to this day, and I'm 30, you know, and that happened when I was 13 and 16. So one of the common misnomers is that, you know, once you go to therapy, you heal, it's done and over with. No, these are lifelong scars that you live with. These are lifelong experiences that you have, and you can't quantify that. You can't. You can't quantify that. You can't, you know, put that into a box. You can't give some sort of blanketed response that people are just supposed to readily accept. And, oh, you're healed, everything's good to go. No, it's a journey.
Right, man. I appreciate you so much for going through that, because I know for a lot of people that'll be very liberating just to hear your story and how it was for you, so that they aren't in this position where they're gaslighting themselves. Because what you talked about was basically gaslighting yourself and invalidating how you felt, invalidating your experience, all of that. And I think that's a lot of what we go through as men, especially when we go through like experiences like sexual assault, or, you know, betrayal trauma, getting cheated on, or domestic violence relationship, all of these different things that we think of as weak for us to go through as men. We end up gaslighting ourselves, and we become like, we victim blame, right? Like we victim blame ourselves, and then also society does it to us, right? So if you get cheated on, first thing people say to you is, well, what weren't you doing? Maybe you weren't having enough. You weren't being sexual enough. And that's the reason why she decided to step out on you, or he decided to step out on you, or whatever the case may be. Right. And in your situation, people are like, well, how did that end up happening? What did you do? Right. Like the first thing is, well, you had to have done something for this thing to happen to you. There's no way that this person would just end up putting you in that kind of situation. Like you had to have done something, instead of believing you, because it's just easier to victim blame, especially when men are involved, because we're supposed to be like these rocks that don't have emotions, that don't have feelings, that are able to deal with everything that gets thrown our way. So how could you possibly have been going through trauma when you're supposed to be able to handle everything that comes your way, right? Because that's what society deems. And a lot of times we take on that role as well, and it ends up being detrimental to us in our healing journey. A lot of people don't reach out and get therapy. So I'm glad that you went to therapy and that's been beneficial to you, because I know another thing that we talked about was your attempted suicide. So can you please break that down too? Because I've had suicidal ideations. I haven't had an attempt, But anytime I hear about anybody that's had an attempt or any kind of suicidal ideations, I always want them to expand on it a little bit more so that the audience can get an understanding of what that looks like and why people get into these situations where they are contemplating suicide.
Absolutely. Depression in and of itself is a very deep, dark place, right? And sometimes I liken it to the idea of having so many people around you, but yet still feeling alone.
Right.
Having so many people, praise you and uplift you, but yet still feeling empty deep down inside. My aunt ended up passing away, and she died right in front of me. And I truly do believe that I did not take enough time to really process it before I went back to school, because I was in high school. And then, kids said something to me and I just flew off the handle. And I was like, I'm going to kill you. No, 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 no. And in the public school system, can't be telling folk you finna kill it. So they ended up 302 with me and sending me to a mental hospital because I was just raging out.
What's a 302?
So a 302 is a code where essentially you're removed from the environment that you're in via the public school system, and you're put into a mental institution, essentially a psychiatric hospital.
Okay.
And in that, I want to say I was there for 5, maybe 6 months, only 2 people came to visit me. And I felt like in that moment that, nobody really cared about me. Right. So I figured if they didn't care about me, why should I care about me? Right. So I went to my room, I took the sheet off my bed, wrapped it around my neck, tied it in a knot, and just kept pulling it and pulling it and pulling it. And now realizing that when you limit oxygen to the brain, all you're going to do is pass out unless applied from an outside source. Right. But what was so, I guess, empowering about that moment was that, and my mentees like to say, oh, my mentor saw an angel. I just seen a figure from the distance when I passed out, a figure with wings. And all I remember is hearing a light voice ask, if I wake you up, would you promise never to do this again? And I said yes, and my eyes opened, and all of the staff were standing around me. My individual social worker was standing over me, and, they were just kind of like, hey, are you okay? Is everything all right? And it was in that moment that it finally clicked for me that we focus so much of our lives, and a lot of our lives are shaped by the people that we wish were there, when really and truly we should be appreciating those that are already there and rendering you that support that you wish you got from those that weren't. And I took that with me into my sports. I take that with me as it relates to my life achievements and things of that nature. And it has really shaped how I manage my friendships and the level of my relationships that I put people on, because sometimes people will just genuinely believe that they're a lot more important to you than they actually are. Feeling entitled to your space, feeling entitled to your time, feeling entitled to, overstep your boundaries. And no, that's not okay. So you set those down and you stand firm on them.
Man, I was just talking about boundaries on the page today, because in Safe Haven, and that's our private platform where we do like holistic healing with the Black men that want to take it up a notch. We had a community forum yesterday, and we were talking about anxiety, and a lot of the guys were saying, I get anxiety when I feel like I'm not able to do enough for myself. And then we started digging deeper, and I was like, okay, why don't you feel like you're doing enough for yourself? It's because I got to do all these different things for all these different people. Like, I got my mom that's relying on me, this person that's relying on me, that person that's relying on me. By the time I do all those things for these people, I have no time from, I have no time for myself. And then that makes me anxious, because I start overthinking, like, man, I'm not doing enough. And I was like, yo, y'all got to say no, right? Like, y'all, that's the solution, right? The solution is saying no, right? And we started having a conversation about setting and enforcing boundaries and just the difference between the two. And now understanding that we are going to have to potentially disappoint other people if we want to provide for ourselves and make sure that we're supported properly, because people are always going to come to you with the things that they want you to do. And then it's up to you to determine whether or not you can do that. But you have to be able to say no, because if you're always saying yes, at the end of the day, you're saying no to something, and that no is you. You know what I'm saying? So
Right.
that's the conversation that we were having. So I'm so glad you talked about people that feel entitled to your time and entitled to your space and your energy. And a lot of times these people that feel entitled are like family. And a lot of times we have a hard time as Black men.
And we feel obligated too.
Right.
Two things I'll say to that.
Mm-hmm.
Number one, no is a complete sentence.
Yep.
A complete sentence. And then number two, I've never lost a single person in my life that wanted to be there. Sometimes people want you to continue to tell them yes to feel validated to be in your life, not necessarily because of the task that they want you to complete, just to be in their life. Mm-hmm. But if me setting a boundary down to you means that I don't want you in my life, I'll holler at you. Let the door hit you where the good Lord split you. You know what I'm saying? So, in that we have to remember that I comes before we when it comes to my boundaries, when it comes to your boundaries. And again, I'm going to repeat this. No is a complete sentence. You don't have to go on and explain yourself. You don't have to go on. But see, here's the caveat to that. When it is family, when it is your parents, sometimes it's hard not to add that explanation because of the sheer baseline respect that we have for them as well. However, as a parent, one thing that I'm, retraining myself on, especially as it relates to my kids, is most people are just like, oh, my kids can't say no to me. Mine can.
Yeah, fact.
Straight up. Hey, Kylie. Hey, Caleb. Hey, Cairo. Do you want this? No. Well, you gonna eat it anyway. Oh, are you hungry? No. Well, it's dinner time. You gonna eat. They're not hungry.
Right.
They'll let you know when they're hungry. And they're just like these little, essentially idiosyncrasies that we take and magnify. And I liken it to what we dealt with as children.
Yeah.
One of the things that I do more with my children that's ever been done from my generation is I talk to them. I'm not just quick to let me just go ahead and pop you in the mouth. let me go ahead and pop you in the forehead. Let me hit, pop you on your behind. No, come here. Let me talk to you. What's wrong with you? My daughter will tell you straight up, Kylie mad. Oh, why are you mad? I was trying to go outside and mommy said, no, I can't go outside. I said, well, sweetheart, it's raining. So you can't go outside right now. You're going to get sick. Oh, I don't want to get sick, Daddy. Okay, well, then you can't go outside. Oh, okay. Thank you, Daddy. And then run off. Most parents will take that during our era, will take that as disrespect. She's folding her arms. She's stomping around. Now, you ain't finna be slamming no doors in my house. That ain't finna happen. Absolutely not. You know what I'm saying? But, she fold her arms. She goes and sit on the couch. If she wants to cry, validate her emotions in that. Same with my son. Oh, now watch this. Same with my sons. When my son is mad and he's crying, I tell him straight up, it's okay for you to cry. Work through that emotion. I'll ask my son, I said, why are you upset? I don't know, Daddy. And I said, you know what, son, that's okay. It's okay to not know. When you figure it out, come back and talk to me. We'll take care of it.
Right.
Then he'll come back. I wanted the controller and Kylie wouldn't give me the controller. I said, Caleb, you got to share. Well, I don't want to share. I know you don't want to share. That's why I have to help y'all share. But in that, as we're working through that, you can see the difference of the look on his face with the validation of, oh, it is okay for me to feel this way. Whereby we'll make people, now watch this. This is how you bring it full circle, right? As children, we beat this, especially into our young men. Don't cry, don't be emotional, blah, 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 right? And then they get older and we wonder why they're emotionally unavailable, emotionally unstable, don't know how to develop healthy relationships because we didn't teach it to them. We didn't show it to them. Now, I will also state simultaneously, it's not an excuse. It's an explanation, but it's not an excuse for you to continue to perpetuate that.
I like that.
So in that, we can acknowledge, I say this on my TikTok all the time, two things can be true at the exact same time. You could have very well had a crappy upbringing, poor, healthy relationship modeling, right? As well as poor emotional management and validation. But we can also simultaneously acknowledge in the same breath that once you get to that point where you can acknowledge that, you're cognizant enough to acknowledge that and conscientious enough to acknowledge that, then you actually begin to work towards that healing process. One of the resources that I oftentimes give people, there's an app called 7 Cups. And it is an amazing resource for people that may not readily have access to therapy or to go, get a therapist and things of that nature. And I like to give people the duality. I've heard some good things. I've heard some bad things. I would just say, of course, always at all times, be careful who you're giving your personal information to. However, it's a resource to reach out and talk to people about your situation that you may not want to be face to face. You may just want to text, and from my experience, I've had a great experience being on the app and, really, having someone that, sometimes it's a complete stranger that can, be unbiased and, really lead you to that place of like self-realization of what you're going through and or to, validate, the things in which you've gone through, but then can also give you an unbiased, not necessarily rebuttal, but feedback for what it is that you're going through and how you could work through that. And I always start with the love languages. And I truly do believe that my love language is words of affirmation because I didn't get it growing up. I got it sparingly. It's, oh, you're the kid that always gets the good grades, that's always on the honor roll. You just got it all together. But I'm depressed. Now, one of the things that I told myself as a child, and as I look back on it, he has since passed away. My biological father, when I was seeking to try and find him, I said to myself, my driving force was, I'm going to be so successful that he's going to find me one day. My name going to be in lights. I'm going to be on TV. I'm going to be in the newspaper, in the magazines. When I got my first article for Forbes magazine, that was amazing. When I, getting published on multiple, news sources as a result of my TikTok. I ended up doing a spoken word commercial, all of these things. And then only to come to find out that a few years prior, he had passed away. And I was robbed of a relationship with him because of a previous situation that he had going on that I was unaware of, so in that we have to really dig deep into where these things originate from. That way we can also simultaneously through our healing process, identify them, right? But not use them as a crutch.
Right, man. I love the fact that you talked about it's an explanation, but it's not an excuse, because a lot of times I feel like a lot of the guys on the page, they love when I talk about why we are the way we are, right? Because like, exactly, this is why I do what I do. This is exactly why. Thank you, Kizzle. This makes perfect sense. And then when I get into how we can get better, now it's crickets. You know what I'm saying? Like now nobody wants, you know what I'm saying? I'm not getting the same engagement. Now I'm getting people that want to criticize the content. Nah, man, we can't be doing this. This is not right. This is dumb, blah, blah. I'm like, all right, bro, do what works for you. I'm just letting you know what worked for me, right? Because a lot of times we like to hide behind the explanation, right? Rather than work on it to get better, because it's easy to say, this is the reason why I am the way I am versus this is what I'm going to do to get to the next level so that I'm better as a man, an individual, husband, father, whatever the case may be, bro. Man.
Let me tell you something my mentor asked me.
What's up?
I was in college. Shout out to my college mama, Miss Bradford. She asked me a question that when I tell you, it just blew my mind. I was preparing for a competition within my fraternity, Alpha Phi Alpha, and it was an oratorical competition. And I told myself that once I passed the first level, I'm not going to play around no more. You know what I'm saying? And I shouldn't have played around in the beginning, but nonetheless. And I told myself when I go to my next competition, I'm not going to read off to the paper, right? I'm going to practice. And, she would ask me maybe 2 or 3 days back to back, have you been practicing? Like, no, I just kind of went to and then just leave it alone. Next day, have you been practicing? No, I just kind of next day. And the third day, she was like, I want you to ask yourself this. Why aren't you doing what you said you set out to do? Again, here come all those excuses, right? All those excuses. Well, I can't do this because of this. And you know how I grew up, I'm not really as dedicated. And then she asked me this question. And I promise you, it's going to rock your world. Who are you outside of your pain? And I was just like, the first thought is to get defensive. Right. What do you mean? Who am I outside my pain? What are you trying to say? In life, it is much easier to be a victim than a victor. So to have people feel bad for you instead of having people congratulate you, neurologically, it does something different to you.
Mm.
And then you get those release of endorphins, that those feel good, chemicals are released to the point where you're just like, they feel sorry for me. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
But then when that fades, then you have to actually confront that which brought about this conversation in and of itself. And there's a specific fear that lies underneath that pain, right? That will push you to that healing process. And most people don't want to be in that vulnerable state and or to be pushed into that vulnerable state because either one, they might not be ready, or two, they just don't want to acknowledge the healing process because for them, it's much more comfortable being a victim. And in that, I don't want that to be misconstrued. I don't want you to feel as though I'm calling what you went through any less valid or any less important. My grandmother would often tell us, I'm not bringing any balloons to your pity party. And I never really understood what that meant until I went to college, right? People who genuinely are going through, if I walk into a room, right? Now, in college, oftentimes you have a roommate. My senior year, I didn't have a roommate because I was, the Mr. equivalent to the Mrs. of the college. So one of the perks was you get your own room, right? But other than that, I had a roommate. If you have a roommate and that roommate walks in the room, let's say I'm playing the game, right? And my chair is back from my TV and he just walks in front. First of all, gamer rule number one, don't walk in front of the television when a game is playing the game.
Come on now, we know that.
That's a sidebar. You know what I'm saying?
Hey, that.
Try to chew. That should be in the 10 Commandments, but I digress. So they walk past and they step on your foot, right? And you're like, whatever. And you keep on playing. Next day, they come in, they step on your foot. Ain't no big deal. The third day they walk in, you're like, yo, man, what's up? To them, in their mind, they didn't do anything to you because you didn't say nothing the other 2 days. Why are you saying something today? It's literally the same with our pain. You wasn't asking me to go get no healing the other day. Why are you asking me to go get some healing today? Oh, because you had a conversation we had an interaction, right? That caused me to see that you're clearly going through something. So then I ask and we delve a little bit deeper into it and we recognize there's some things that you need to unpack. And sometimes we will want more for others than they will want for themselves. And in that, I say, go when you're ready, because going when you're not ready for someone else puts you into a state of dependency on that person's reaction to your action instead of your own responsibility of a choice that you decided to make. What does that mean? You said a lot of words, Mr. Anthony. What does that mean? Me going to therapy because, let's say, my best friend wanted me to go, right? When I go back to my best friends, like, oh, yeah, I went to therapy. It was a great session, blah, blah, blah. And they're just like, okay, you should have been going. That could break you in that moment. Because you're not genuinely doing it for you. You're doing it for the validation of that person because they said you should go. However, when you go for yourself and you make that choice to say, I want to do better, I want to be better, when you do have that breakout session or, something is revealed within a session that you didn't even realize that you were still dealing with. I don't know how many times that happened to me. I was in a session and we were talking about something completely unrelated and something else popped up and I'm just, waterworks. I'm like, wow, I thought I was over that.
Good. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like the little girl when I was in kindergarten that pushed me off the beanbag while I was reading my green eggs and ham. I thought I was over that. Nah. Hey, yo, Susie, we need to have some words. You know what I'm saying? Like, you don't realize all of these things that you might have compartmentalized in that moment that once that person just kind of, they just lightly poke and poke and poke. And then one day that nail is going to be sharp and they're going to burst your bubble. And then everything is going to come raining down and you're going to recognize that there's some things that you need to deal with. And in that, it allows you to be a better person. It allows you to be a better friend. It allows you to be a better spouse. It allows you to be a better teacher. It allows you to be a better coworker, et cetera, et cetera. But the very first thing you should seek to do is become a better person for you.
Right, man. That's a fact, bro. That is such a fact. I love the fact that you said that because I talk to my brother about this sometimes. I'm just like, yo, bro, if you're gonna do something, make sure that you're doing it for yourself and that you're never doing it for anybody else. I always want to encourage him to do a bunch of different things, right? But I never want him to do something because of me or because of my parents or because of his friends or anybody else, right? Because when you do that, the motivation is fleeting, right? The motivation only happens, or you're only motivated based off of like what you said, when you see that people are giving a certain reaction to what you're doing, right? At the end of the day, another thing is that you have to live with those decisions, right? Like, I don't have to live with that decision. Like, not really. You are the one that have to live with that decision, right? Once you make that decision to go into therapy, that's a huge commitment. We were just talking about this in Safe Haven yesterday. I was like, yo, you guys need to be saying no more, because yes is expensive, right? And I heard this from Tory Roberts, I believe. He was saying, like, I say no because yes is expensive. Once I commit to something, I have to do it. I have to follow up with that, whether it be time, energy, effort, or sometimes money, right? And if we're talking about specifically therapy, it's almost all of those things: time, money, energy, effort, and money, right? So you can't afford to make these big of a decision based off of what somebody else thinks you should be doing, right? Like, people can see things in us and suggest things, but at the end of the day, you have to do enough probing of yourself and understand where you are and hold yourself personally accountable to making a change for you. And that's why I talk about personal accountability on the page as well, because, like, yo, bro, we don't get anywhere by saying, you know what, I'm the reason why I am the way I am is because of this person or that person, right? We always want to point fingers, man. Like, that ain't doing nothing for you, right? I got cheated on. Like, okay, cool. Now, what am I going to do about that, right? I can't keep on saying, yo, it's her fault that I'm this way and that I can't commit to long-term relationships because I was cheated on. Like, nah, bro. You got cheated on how many years ago? Not to say that time heals, you know, all wounds, because I don't believe in that at all. But what I'm trying to say is, all this time has passed. What have you done outside of just sit in the pain and use it as an excuse as to why you are the way you are? So many times I have conversations with men where they're like, yo, bro, I'm this way because of X. So we know the awareness is there. You've already cracked the first level. You just haven't taken any steps after that, right? Like, you know why you are the way you are. So let's work on that, right? Let's see what we can do. Let's see what you can do specifically to better that situation, instead of harboring all this pain and resentment, trying to get back at that person or sitting in it and not getting better, man. Like, I had this quote that I put up on the page. I said, never try to get back at someone that does you wrong, right? Because it's just not worth it. You got to let God handle that. It does nothing for you. A lot of times we get into this like petty war where it's like, this person did me wrong. All right, cool. I'm gonna see how I could one up them and get even lower than them, right? And it's like, it may make you feel better in the moment, maybe, right?
That temporary satisfaction,
You get what I'm saying, right? That instant gratification, right? Versus the delayed gratification of actually doing the healing work and getting better over time, man. So I'm so glad that you talked about that. And I know you talked earlier about domestic violence in your relationship. You talked about you being over 6 foot, over 200 pounds, you having a partner that was, you know, very small, somebody with that people will look at and be like, nah, there's no way that this happens. So can you break down that dynamic and what that looked like for you? I definitely want you to touch on that.
Right. A lot of it stemmed from this idea that many of us, and then I talk to guys about this on such a consistent basis, that grew up with this whole, you know, if she put her hands on you, she loves you, you know, not realizing that that is such a toxic thing to teach, especially to a little boy. And, you know, my grandmother taught us this, you know, my mom kind of taught us that aspect of things, but my grandmother taught me this. And again, when I say so many things came into play when I went to college, it just like, it clicked, it made sense. Love does not hurt. Pain hurts. And oftentimes people say, well, you know, if you love me, you wouldn't hurt me, blah, blah, blah. But for people that are spoon-fed both, it brings about a state of confusion, right? To whereby this whole idea of someone being crazy and not being able to be managed, so to speak, for some, that's arousing. And that's, you know, nothing against them. However, once it goes to a point of you demeaning, diminishing, degrading, and devaluing an individual, that's not okay. There's nothing okay about that. You can't say that you love me in one breath and then simultaneously turn around and try to sink me to the lowest of low beneath the earth that you walk on. And then the physical, sometimes it starts off small. That's part of the reason why I don't even play fight anymore, like at all.
Nope.
I do not play fight.
Nope.
Now, with my kids, sure. However, when it comes to relationship, absolutely not. Because those things can be misconstrued. You might get hit a little too hard and it might just snap you into a certain mindset to whereby it started off just simple like, oh, you crazy. Like a, all right, watch yourself. You know what I'm saying? And then that hand goes from here to here. And then it starts to become punches, right? Then it starts to become different locations, chest, head, face. Then they start leaving marks, scratches. And then for people, and I don't want to be dismissive of the process because statistically, it takes 7 times to leave before you leave for good in a domestic violence type of situation or dynamic. Or let me retract that, because I have since been educated on the nuance of that sentiment. We now refer to it as inter-partner violence. And I'm sorry, intimate partner violence. And that's just to be intersectional as it relates to those types of situations. Right. So that intimate partner of violence that takes place, in that you recognize either from an outside source, from an internal feeling, this is not okay. Right. And sometimes there are people that, you know, and God rest their soul, they didn't have that opportunity. You know, their lives were taken, you know, or they took their own lives as a result of it because they wanted to escape that. And it came to a point where I recognized in and of itself with my own personal situation that this is not okay. There's nothing okay about this. However, I'm not gonna lie, the sex was pretty immaculate, you know what I'm saying? So I'm just gonna be honest, you know? And I felt like in that moment, and like I said, if I'm just being honest, I feel like I made more excuses for her than she made. Because she wasn't shy about it. You know what I'm saying? She wasn't shy about putting her hands on me, you know, talking to me like, you know, whatever. And I think it kind of speaks to the matters of the heart that sometimes we will do foolish things. We will allow foolish things to take place just because we love and care about a person. However, the holistic thought process is we should love ourselves more, you know? And that's not to say that if you're going through this, that it's your fault and you don't love yourself. No, it's when you put yourself first and you say, you know what? I don't deserve this. I don't deserve the way you're treating me. I don't deserve for you to talk to me like this. I deserve better. And in that, sometimes it's a matter of being offered resources. Sometimes it's a matter of, like I said, your own personal feelings of that declaration. And then sometimes there's what we call the bystander intervention, to whereby you have someone step in and then you become validated in that moment. Like, you know what? You're right. I don't deserve this. You should not have been doing this. However, when our mind is so discombobulated sometimes with how we feel about a person, we will allow those things to be perpetuated within our relationships. And from that moment forward, I said, no other woman in a relationship with me is ever going to put their hands on me, not even playfully, because that's a boundary that I'm setting down. And if you can't respect that, I'll holler at you.
Bro, this is
I want to end this with there were relationships that I had thereafter that they thought I was playing, because one thing about a boundary, they gonna test it, and you stand firm on it. You don't fold just because of X, Y, and Z. You stay firm on it. And I was like, you know what? Relationship is over. Communication done and over with. You're just gonna break up with me because of that? Yes. I set a boundary down. You disrespected that boundary. You did not take it into account. You're done. You're done.
Man, this has been such a powerful episode, bro. Can you please tell the people where they can find you, how they can support, anything that you have coming up, just all the good stuff, bro, all the good stuff that you're doing?
Oh, absolutely. You can find me on all social media platforms. I Speak 1906, TikTok, Twitter, Instagram. On my YouTube is Anthony Hyland, my first and last name. You can also purchase a copy of my book, The Purpose of Power. It's available on Amazon and wherever else books are sold. And that kind of delves a little bit deeper into my life, the first 25 years of situations that I dealt with and the lessons that I learned as a result of them. I also have a spoken word album entitled Metaphorically Speaking, and I have a poetry book that's in the works right now, as well as an upcoming social media series of books of dealing with, social media clout chasers, different types of content creation, the basics of social media, how to navigate social media and things of that nature. So definitely be on the lookout for that. Tune in to my live streams on TikTok. We always, try to educate. Sometimes it get a little messy, but, we're working through that, purging out, those, negative interactions.
Mhm.
But sometimes you got to read these goofies,
Right.
I appreciate the invite, when reaching out. And I can definitely say Kizza was so professional, and I do want to, state this in the very beginning because it was
Yeah.
impactful. And I think this is important.
Yeah.
When I first seen our initial intake and I seen the email, he straight said, if you late and if you don't show up, I ain't hitting you up ever again. And I was like, okay, let me make sure I'm on time. So when he hit me, I'm in the back room. I'm in the back room. I've been in here. I don't know what's going on with my computer.
Right.
And I think that was very vitally important because when we say time is money, it is. And really and truly that boundary to say, hey, listen, I'm taking time out of my day to meet with you and talk with you to get the ball rolling, respect my time, respect my platform. And from there, it was at that moment I knew that this was going to be magical. I already knew it was just because of you having that much respect for your own platform and for your own audience only amplifies what I already feel about the platform from reaching out saying, hey, let's work. Hey, let's get something going, and then reaching back out like, hey, I had these things going on. We picked right back up. All right, cool. Let's have, this pre-conversation. Boom, and let's get it. So I genuinely appreciate that, man. And, you're not just a man of words, you're a man of your word. Yeah. And I appreciate that and I respect that.
I love it, bro. I appreciate you definitely coming on the show and giving your gems and talking about your story, leading with vulnerability, bro. It's definitely been dope. We got to get you back on here again. If there's anything that I can do to help you out in any capacity, let me know, man. Let me know for sure. And the reason why I want to expand on the boundary that I've set, right, and enforcing that boundary, the reason why I have that on there is because when I first started having meetings with people, I would take meetings with everybody, right? I was sending my calendar everywhere, right? Like I was like, yo, if you want to meet with me, here's my calendar, right? And what ended up happening is when you don't take your time seriously, other people don't. And so people would schedule time and they wouldn't show up, right? No message, nothing, right? And so I'm allotting this 30 minutes or an hour or however long to you and you don't even show up. Meanwhile, I'm making sure that I'm missing work meetings. I'm planning around all of this stuff. I can fit you into my calendar because the platform is that important to me. And that was a real wake-up call for me that I realized like everybody doesn't take your platform as seriously as you do. And so in order to make sure that people do take your platform and your time seriously, you have to let people know straight out the gate, yo, bro, you got 10 minutes to show up. And I think 10 minutes is more than enough time. You know what I'm saying?
More than enough.
You have 10 minutes to show up. If you can't show up within those 10 minutes, you should have already sent me a message. And if not, then all right, that's a no show, no call or no tell or whatever the case may be. And we don't need to do something again if that's how you treat my time and honestly your time, because that's something that you booked out for your time as well. So I love that you mentioned that because anybody that's interested in collaborating, we can have a conversation. We can talk about it through DMs, but once I send that calendar, they just know I'm serious. I don't meet with everybody. Like I take my time very seriously, especially during times where I could be recording content, which is the podcast, and planning content, the precursor conversation and that kind of stuff, bro. So yeah, man, look, man, I'm extremely grateful for having you on here, man. I'm extremely grateful that you got to come on here and tell your story and talk about, sexual assault, domestic violence, and all these different things that we normally see as taboo as Black men, because we need more Black men speaking about these things and normalizing these conversations and normalizing the healing process afterwards, because a lot of us don't know what it looks like, bro. So I'm thankful for you, bro, for real.
Absolutely.
Yo, I'm excited, man. We're currently building the exclusive community and it's going to have so many dope features. We're partnering with a Black organization to offer low-cost therapy to each member of the exclusive community. And when I say low cost, I mean that members will be able to get therapy sessions for less than $50, regardless of who they are and where they are. We're also going to have free ebooks and courses, including both the Hurting to Healing ebook and the therapy ebook I'm currently writing, live podcast episodes where you'll be able to interact with the guest and I in real time, community forums, exclusive merch, and categorized content so you can easily find information that may be useful to you. So go to expressyourselfblackman.com/therapy and register for early access. It's literally a 30-second process. I just need your name, email, and social media handle to make sure you get access before anyone else. And before I dip, I just want to thank you for your support. Without people like you, none of this would be possible. I can't wait to see you when we launch.
Sometimes I know you feel like you ain't got nobody to speak to. Shoulder to lean on somebody you could preach to. No, you need to hear it, my brother, I love you. We got way too much to live for.